Okay, and we are live. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by a special guest today, Jayy Dimes. His link is down in the description box. Go ahead, give him a subscription, and make sure you smash the thumbs up on this episode. We're going to be talking about NFL free agency. We're going to be talking about, of course, the New York Giants, their interest in some of these wide receivers, and just having fun talking with you guys in the chat. But without further ado, Jayy, how are you doing today? And are you ready to talk some Giants football?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm ready to go, man. I'm ready to talk some good Giants football, man. And just like you, I'm excited for, the draft and, all this good stuff. So, man, yeah, I'm ready. I'm excited. Let's go.
All right, let's go ahead and dive into it. We've already got some questions in the chat. This one from RM. I guess this is probably a good jumping on point where we could start a discussion. Center or wide receiver with the first round pick? That's a pretty good question because when you take a look at what the Giants need, those are arguably the two biggest needs. I mean, you could argue that they still need to reinforce that linebacker core. You know, obviously, Bobby Okereke, great player, but they still need someone behind him. You know, you need two starting middle linebackers and a 3-4 defense. So they still got to add more depth there. Of course, cornerback, still a massive position of need. Left guard, still a position of need. So there's a lot of needs for these Giants, and wide receiver kind of isn't the number one need anymore. However, I'm just imagining this offense with a wide receiver in it, and I think that it could be big time. Like you could see an explosion from Daniel Jones this season if they get him another true number one receiver. So I don't know. I think I'm leaning towards wide receiver just because I think that the wide receivers in this draft class are better. I think there's more talent that fits the first round and fits the 25th overall pick at wide receiver. But I do like me a couple of these centers, particularly John Michael Schmitz. Makes a lot of sense for the Giants. But curious to know, what are your thoughts on this question?
It's wide receiver for me. I think that when you're looking at, I know we kind of addressed the wide receiver position a little bit with the signing of Paris Campbell and, trade for Darren Waller. But I still think the Giants need to go and try to get out that outside threat. I think that, we're looking at those four wide receivers, Smith-Njigba, Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, and Zay Flowers. If those guys are, there at 25, I want those guys over a center. And yes, center is definitely a need. You just lost John Feliciano, even though some people might say he wasn't the best. He still was a starting center. He still had, the system familiarity with Brian Dable. But if the first round wise, I think wide receiver is the way the Giants should go when you're talking about that or center, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you because when you take a look at what an impact of a WR1 can have on a quarterback, like we've seen this numerous times, and I'm just waiting for Daniel Jones to finally get that wide receiver that's so dynamic. It really gives him the opportunity to break out, like we saw at Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen. Patrick Mahomes, to start off his career, had Tyreek Hill to throw to. He still has Travis Kelce. And I think that the Giants they kind of just found the guy who they want to be, the Travis Kelce. I think the way that Mike Kafka likes his offense, he doesn't need a wide receiver one. He just needs a bunch of capable guys and then a dominant tight end. That's the Kansas City model rather than the Buffalo Bills model, which gets you a dominant wide receiver and a bunch of solid tight ends. You know, Dawson Knox, and they had good depth behind them. But I think that this Kansas City model that the Giants are building could really be a combination. It could be Bills and Chiefs if they go ahead and get that WR1, which I think would be really exciting. But my boy Tuto's in here. Tuto, I love you, man. You're here every week. Massive salutes and respect to the big boss. Tony, appreciate it, man. All the diehard fans in the chat. Greetings from Italy. Greetings, Tuto. Happy to have you back, and thank you so much for the donation. All right, hold on. There's another question up here that I liked from Charles Barkley. Do you think this is the real Charles Barkley? What do you think?
You never know, man. He might be on this burner YouTube account. You never know. You never know.
Never know. This could be Chuck. This could be Charles Barkley. And Charles Barkley has a big question. Why didn't we trade for Elijah Moore? I'm going to let you take this one first, and then I'll go ahead and give my take on it.
Well, we saw he went for. I think he went for that second round draft pick, and I think the Giants were, when they are looking at the type of wide receivers that he wanted in this offense, Elijah Moore did fit. He is a separator. He is a guy that's lethal when the ball's in his hands. But I think the Giants are looking at that first round as the prime spot where they want to go out and look for that wide receiver. Elijah Moore is talented, but I think that the Giants getting Paris Campbell kind of is that type. You can say they kind of play the same. They're both deep threats, both speedy wide receivers. And my opinion on Elijah Moore is like, I don't know if they think he would fit the culture. He did have he wanted the ball more. He kind of requested a trade. I'm not sure if Joe Shane, if that really attracted him. I know a lot of Giants fans wanted Elijah Moore, near the trade deadline. But when I'm looking at the draft picks, the Giants just sent a third for Darren Waller. And I don't think the Giants are going to actually trade another pick for a wide receiver that's not in this draft. But that's just one reason why I think we didn't trade for Elijah Moore. I think the Giants are looking at that first round as the way they are going to add on to this wide receiver core.
And I think, kind of building on what you're saying, they also might look at that second round pick as a way to draft a player who's better than Elijah Moore, because there are some really solid wide receivers in round 2. Plus, when you draft a player rather than trading for a player, they're initially on that rookie contract. I know Elijah Moore's still on his rookie contract, low cap hit, but he's now 2 years into it. So that's a big difference. You're trading a guy, trading for a guy, and you're getting him for 2 years rather than drafting a guy in the second round for 4 years. And I think that's a huge difference there. I do really like Elijah Moore, though. I think he's a great player. I'm curious to see how he fits in over in Cleveland. Cleveland's crazy, trading away a first and a second round pick. Like, I don't know. That's like the opposite of building through the draft. Cleveland is kind of screwed, but good for them because I do not like their quarterback. So, oh well. But Tuto, let's talk some soccer real quick, Tuto. We got to do it. Some football on your end. Big Boss Tony, Napoli SC is killing everyone in the league, and they ain't stopping or slowing down anytime soon. Forget about it. Tuto, Champions League. Napoli's going to win it. Watch. They're going to beat Man City. I'm telling you. All right. Elijah Moore is just a younger Sterling Shepard. That's a really interesting thing to say. And also, Jay, we have the answer to our question. He is just Chuck's spirit animal.
Oh, Chuck's spirit animal. You know, Charles Barkley's a wild person, so, you know, pretty sure Charles Barkley, his spirit animal is even more wilder than him.
Yeah. If this guy is Chuck's spirit animal, this is a dangerous man in our chat right now. All right, we did trade Kadarius Toney for a third. We essentially traded Kadarius Toney for Darren Waller. Love that deal. Can't stop talking about that deal and how much I love it. But, you know, taking a look at where the Giants are, I think that they would rather, if they were going to trade some draft picks, trade up in the draft. Maybe, you know, when you're looking at that other third round pick, the one, 65 overall, I think, they trade up with that in the first round. They could probably get inside the top 20, and maybe that's where they land a guy like Quentin Johnson, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, or, of course, Jordan Addison, who I know a lot of fans of this channel really, really enjoy. So I think that that's kind of the move that they want to go with, just building through the draft. I think Joe Shane's kind of done with free agency right now. I don't think he's going to pursue any of these top receivers in trades, free agency. I think he's just kind of done and getting ready for the draft. You'll see some more low-key signings, I think, and obviously they'll have to make some cap space. You know, Leonard Williams, Adoree Jackson, they can get restructured or extended. But I think that the Giants are kind of just settling in here. The dust is settled in free agency. They're looking ahead to the draft, and I think that's the right move right now. But what are your thoughts on the Leonard Williams contract? I know everyone's just waiting for this restructure or for him to be released, whatever it ends up being. We're all just waiting on it because the Giants right now have less than $1 million in cap space. So what do you think that they should do with him? Is it cut, release? Those are the same thing. Cut, restructure, or extend? Which way do you want to see it shape out?
Well, at the combine, when he was giving out the press conference, he was saying how, like, this defense needed more depth pieces in the interior defensive line. So I don't see the Giants, you know, cutting Leonard Williams. I think that's like the worst case scenario. That's like the last resort. You want to you don't want to keep Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence on the, you know, on the interior, but a restructure has to happen. I think that is something that if the Giants want to, you know, if you want in some shape or form trade for DeAndre Hopkins, something like that, or even if you want to, you know, be able to sign your draft class, that restructure of Leonard Williams' contract is going to have to happen. A $32 million cap hit is insane. I think that is actually the highest, I want to say, for interior defensive linemen. And we know you got Aaron Donald, Chris Jones. It's a wild cap hit. And Leonard Williams is a talented player. But that $32 million cap hit must come down if the Giants, you know, want to operate after the draft or even, like, again, sign your draft pick. So we hope this doesn't become like a James Bradbury situation like last season. But a restructure is going to happen for the Giants to keep, you know, removing around with the cap space in the draft for Leonard Williams.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's huge because when you look at the draft class in general, it's a big draft class this year. They still got 10 picks. I know they traded one away for Darren Waller, but still 10 overall draft picks. You're talking about an expensive draft class. That's you're going to have to clear probably $10 to $20 million right there just to have the draft class and a little insurance money for the regular season. So something has to happen. I think that Leonard Williams is a candidate to be extended. I don't think that they're going to want to move on from him. I think that when you look at his impact as a leader on the defense, he said he wants to continue playing alongside Dexter Lawrence. I think Dexter Lawrence feels the exact same way. They're building something over there in the defensive line, And another thing that you just mentioned, they don't really have the depth to cut a guy like Leonard Williams. Like, they just can't do that. They need starters on the defensive line. Our run defense was bad enough as it was last year with Leonard Williams in there. They need more reinforcements, not less. So I do think that they have to go ahead and extend him. I'd like to see Leonard Williams extended because I just think that this is a player who really showed up to play for the Giants when a lot of fans counted him out. I want to see him retire a Giant. I think it's a good story that he really won the fan base over in the way that he did. But I want to talk about this other topic that the chat was just chatting about. You got old aches and pains. No thank you to OBJ. You got Nick saying no thanks, OBJ. Someone else said it. No thank you, OBJ. Crypto moves. He could be a cancer elsewhere. He's more of a cowgirls wide receiver diva type. Interesting. And Chris D, no BJ. So, Jay, OBJ or no BJ?
Right now we have no choice to say no OBJ, actually. We were looking at the cap space. First off, we were sitting at around 800,000 to move around and give out. But the reports are that he was asked for 15 to 20 million. Even if OBJ isn't really asking for that, I do think a bidding war is going to end up happening because so many teams are reportedly interested in his services. And OBJ is my favorite player of all time. But I know that the way that the Giants and Joe Shane have been moving around, I don't think OBJ is a move that the Giants would make heading into the draft after, you got Darren Waller, you just signed Paris Campbell. OBJ's coming with 2 ACL injuries. He's not really a number one wide receiver like we know him to be last time he was in our colors. But I think right now we have no choice to say no to OBJ with the cap space and, how we're looking at the draft. I'm going to say no to OBJ for right now.
All right, so then let's circle back around to the first conversation that we had talking about wide receivers in the draft class. Who do you want? Who's your number one guy? Like, let's say, everyone's on the board, every single receiver. No receiver's been drafted yet, 25th overall pick. Who is your guy with the 25th overall pick?
I am a Jordan Addison guy. I'm looking at, how fluid of a route runner he is. I think even though he probably doesn't have the highest floor, a lot of people say that would be Quentin Johnson with him being, 6'2" and have that electric speed. I'm looking at Jordan Addison as a day one impact guy, a plug and play guy, that real outside threat. I think that, the Giants, Jordan Addison he's just my guy. I think that, he's a safer pick than a Quentin Johnston. I think that, again, he could have that day one impact. And if he was to be there at pick 25, I need Jordan Addison to be in red and blue. I need him to be in red and blue. I'm a Jordan Addison guy, big Jordan Addison guy.
Yeah, I am a big Jordan Addison guy as well. However, I did start to feel a little lukewarm on him after his combine. I think when you look at, so here's the comparison that I want to make is Jordan Addison and Zay Flowers. I like both of those guys a lot. And honestly, I also really like Quentin Johnson. I see the potential there. I think that he's really boom or bust though. So I don't think he's the fit for the Giants. The Giants need a guy who's ready to play day one, can make an impact right now. The moves that they made this offseason, they were very much win now moves. So they can't go ahead and get a project at receiver like Quentin Johnson. I just don't think he makes sense. But when you look at Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers was shorter than Jordan Addison. And in college, I'm talking, and he still weighed about the same as Jordan Addison. And you look at Jordan Addison, he measured in at 5'11". I think it was 173. Zay Flowers put on a ton of weight, 13 pounds of muscle, and he still ran a faster 40-yard dash time at 183 than Jordan Addison did at 173. That's 10 pounds, and still he was faster. I mean, we know Zay Flowers is a burner, but for him to run the speed that he did was really impressive at that weight. And then for Jordan Addison to not kind of overachieve in the 40-yard dash, like people thought people thought he was going to have average speed, and he did have very average speed, but he came in even more undersized than people expected him to. And I think that's a big problem. So I do have some question marks about, his speed, his ability to separate, his ability to come out of breaks and really create the distance on a cornerback, because there's some really fast cornerbacks in the NFL, and Jordan Addison, a skinny guy, if he's trying to separate, he also needs the speed to separate. So that's where my question mark starts to come in. I know I did that film breakdown a couple weeks ago on this channel, and pretty much everyone in the chat probably knows what I'm referencing, but I did say he was the number one receiver in the class. However, I'm starting to walk that back just a little bit. I think it's a closer race, and I actually am almost starting to lean Jaxon Smith-Njigba. The only red flag for him is that he didn't really play in 2022. But what are your thoughts on him? Because, I've kind of given my thoughts on the channel before. I'll go over them briefly. Like, his route running is insane. If you look at the way he performed at the combine, that was elite. That was an elite performance. And then also at his pro day today, he ran a pretty good time. For him that was a good time, that 4.5. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on Jaxon Smith-Njigba? And do you think that if he's there at 25, is that your pick?
I'm a Buckeyes fan, and I've watched Jackson Smith-Njigba progress to what he is now, and I look at that. We have no choice but to look at that 2021 season where he racked up 1,595 yards. He also did that with Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, who was the Offensive Rookie of the Year in 2022 on the team. Jackson Smith-Njigba, though I know a lot of people like to throw this slot label on him. Yes, he does dominate from the slot, but he has the size to work on the outside. And today, at his pro day, his stock rose. He had a very good showing at his pro day. And again, if he is there at pick 25, I'm fine with Jackson Smith-Njigba too. I think the Giants actually, their number one wide receiver on their board, in my opinion, right now, is Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think that, they had the dinner with him, I think last night before the pro day. I think that he would be a guy that, you're looking at, he's just like so fluid. He's so smooth. He's always playing to his level, playing up to his speed. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba would be a great pick for the New York Giants. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba is a great pick, actually. I don't think, I like him to throw the slot label on him. I don't think that's a problem. We see a lot of players now in the NFL that dominate the slot. Jackson Smith-Njigba would be a great pick for the New York Giants, in my opinion.
No, I'm actually in the same boat as you. He's like slowly but surely working his way up my rankings into that WR1 spot. The more I watch him, the more I like his game. His combine blew me away with the 6.57 second 3-cone and a 3.93 short shuttle. The best figures of any receiver in attendance. I actually checked that today. It's the best of any prospect in attendance at this year's combine. He crushed it. He was better than every corner. There was a tight end who was really high up there, which I got to go look into him because that was like crazy. But yeah, JSN, dude.
Was it Zach Kuntz? Was it him?
It could have been. I don't know. I don't even remember what name it was. I just saw tight end. I was like, well, that was weird. I was writing an article on JSN this morning. So, but yeah, dude, I agree with you. I think that fans who are like, oh, he's just a slot receiver, I don't want him. It's like, all right, so do you want an outside guy who might settle into the NFL as a WR2, as a decent outside receiver, right? Or do you want one of the best slot receivers in the NFL, right? Like, I'll take one of the best slot receivers in the NFL. They can be just as impactful as your mediocre WR2. And I think that look at guys like Keenan Allen, the career that he's had, how he was a true bona fide primary receiving threat while playing out of the slot. I am totally okay with getting a dominant wide receiver and having them play in the slot if it means that they are a dominant receiver. And I actually do see that kind of potential with a guy like JSN to just be that guy who can go for 90 catches, 1,200 yards in a season. And listen, one of the players who was coming out of college, didn't run the fastest 40-yard dash time, but has turned into an absolute stud in the NFL, Justin Jefferson. I'm not trying to make that exact comparison between JSN and Justin Jefferson, but everybody said when he was coming out, he's a slot guy. He's just going to be your over-the-middle slot receiver. No, Justin Jefferson is now one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, plays slot, plays outside. He's unguardable, and he also had crazy route running and agility and about 6 foot, 196 pounds coming out of college. So very similar to JSN. So maybe I am making that comparison there, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, those are my thoughts on JSN, but any of the other receivers that you have your eyes on?
Zay Flowers out of Boston College. I had a mock draft a couple of weeks ago. He was my pick at pick 25. I also think his stock has risen definitely after having that 4.42 at the combine. I think his stock has rose. Jackson Smith-Njigba's stock has rose. I think Quentin Johnston has kind of plummeted a little bit. I'm not seeing as much hype around him as wide receiver one as we were seeing before the combine. But Zay Flowers, to me, again, is a guy who, if he is there at 25, I would not mind him in Giants blue. He fits the scheme. You know what I'm saying? He can separate when the ball is in his hands. He is a lethal weapon. You're talking about a deep threat. He got that. Zay Flowers, another guy I like. I actually had him ranked a little bit higher over Jackson Smith-Njigba, but Smith-Njigba definitely closed that race a little bit after the combine and definitely today's pro day that he performed at it. So I'm fine with any of those four. I think Quentin Johnston, like you said, is a boom or bust guy, but I don't think Jackson go wrong with any of those four guys in that group right there.
Yeah, I really like Zay Flowers as well, but I'll say I started watching a little bit more film on him recently. There were times, and I think that this is going to be alleviated by the extra 13 pounds that he added, but there were times on his film where he would be running. Which game did I watch? I can't even remember. It wasn't Florida State. There would be times where he's trying to run a go route up the sideline and there's a press man corner and he literally would just run out of bounds rather than taking the contact. And I think that's obviously a big problem if you're trying to play outside wide receiver in the NFL. You know, Zay Flowers having that habit, being that afraid of contact at the line of scrimmage, definitely a little cause for concern. However, the extra 13 pounds, I saw the picture of him like the before and after. He's built it now. Like he really filled out his frame. I like Zay Flowers a lot. I think he's really shifty. He's dynamic with the ball in his hands. He's a really good player. But yeah, I mean, listen, there's a lot of guys that these guys are talking about in the chat. This is interesting. All right, thoughts on Tank Dell? I also like him a lot.
Yeah, total production. He was definitely productive at his last year at Houston. I think he's more definitely of a second round option for the Giants. I think that I wouldn't mind him. You know, we're talking about, again, he is a slot guy, I guess you can say, but a lot of players in this draft are, you know, kind of slot wide receivers. People say the same thing with Zay Flowers. People say the same thing with Jaxon Smith-Njigba. But Tank Dell, definitely at that, what is it, the Senior Bowl? He was elite. You know, he had a great performance there. So I wouldn't mind Tank Dell. He kind of reminds me of Kadarius Toney. I don't want to, you know, kind of put those two in the same light, but he kind of reminds me of Kadarius Toney when the ball is in his hands, how he can cut left, right, all that. So I like Tank Dell. I like him a lot. I think he's a second round option definitely for the Giants.
Yeah, no, I actually completely agree with you. I think that, you know, how I was mentioning earlier, they'd rather draft someone with that second round pick than trade for someone with that second round pick. I mean, we've heard the Jerry Jeudy's, we've heard the DeAndre Hopkins, all those rumors, whatever. But I think they'd rather take that second round pick and spend it on a guy like Tank Dell. I think he makes a lot of sense. And Jalen Hyatt as well. But I've seen him in some mocks go in round one. However, the majority of them in the early round two. So I don't even know if he would be an option for the Giants. But I do really like Jalen Hyatt. The thing with Jalen Hyatt, I'll give you my pro comparison, and maybe this will like click for you and you'll see it. He's like Deshaun Jackson 2.0. A lot of Giants fans will hate to hear that. And Deshaun Jackson, for the record, my least favorite NFL player of all time because of what he did to us when he returned that punt. I will never forget that day and the way that I ran to my room crying as a little child. But Jalen Hyatt, really solid player, reminds me a lot of Deshaun Jackson. I don't know if you've watched much of him, but if you're familiar with Jalen Hyatt, what are your thoughts on him?
I'm not the biggest Jalen Hyatt guy, but you know what they say about speed. They say you can't teach speed. And, you know, he would bring a different element to the offense. You can't, you know, I remember I didn't really watch a lot of Tennessee ball, but when I was one Saturday watching Tennessee versus Alabama, he was the guy that, you know, definitely turned heads. I don't know what stats he had, you know, from the top of my head, but he was productive against one of the best defenses in the country at Alabama. But I'm not the biggest guy. I'm not the highest guy on him, but if the Giants took him, just that speed element alone got to get you kind of excited for him. He wasn't asked to do all of the type of routes that all these other wide receivers have been asked, but when he was asked to do whatever routes he was asked to do, he was elite at it. You can't, you know, you say you can't teach speed, but not the biggest guy on him, but I would not mind him at pick 25 if the Giants were to take him. But yeah, I'm also seeing some like, you know, second round, early second round type of projections for him. But if the Giants took him at 25, I wouldn't be mad at it, but I wouldn't be, you know, the most happiest guy because I'm more of a Flowers, Smith-Njigba guy, but can't go wrong with speed.
Mm-hmm.
I like Jalen Hyatt. He's okay. He's okay. I don't mind him.
Yeah, I personally wouldn't take him at 25. I don't think he's a first round talent. I just think that when you're in the first round and you're drafting a receiver, you're hoping to get a guy who can be a wide receiver one. Jalen Hyatt's ceiling for me is like a really good, like one of the best wide receiver twos. And kind of like Deshaun Jackson was, he was a really, really good WR2 his whole career, but he was never considered a true number one guy. So yeah, that's kind of why I make that comparison with Jalen Hyatt. But all right, let's talk about this question right here from our guy Charles Barkley, the spirit animal. Predictions for Darren Waller catches and touchdowns. This is a tough one because it depends on how they use him. You know, are they going to line him up out wide a lot? They're going to throw him in the slot. I mean, I know they're going to move him around, but where does his target share come from? And I think that's where it gets really, really interesting with Darren Waller. But I think he could score at least 7 touchdowns this year. I think he's going to be the primary receiving threat. So somewhere from 7 to 10, I think a big year is in store for Darren Waller.
Yeah, it also comes down to health. I don't want to, you know, freaking down on the trade or nothing like that because of health, but it's something that we got to think about. We know the Giants and the injury bug are like hand in hand, peanut butter and jelly. But if he does, you know, stay on the field for about let's say 15 games out of 17, I think he can reach 7, 8 touchdowns. Yards, oh no, catches. Who knows? I don't know if, the Giants, like I said, how are they going to use him? Is it going to be more outside? Are they going to use him like a wide receiver one, like people have been saying? Or are they going to use him more in that inside? I know Jordan Raanan said that they were going to use a lot of, two tight end sets with him and Daniel Bellinger. But it's kind of hard to predict that right now. It's kind of hard to predict that for me.
Yeah, catches is really tough to predict. But if there is going to be a 1,000-yard receiver on the roster right now, it's going to be Darren Waller. And I really hope that he hits that, because seeing a New York Giants tight end reach 1,000 yards is like a real anomaly. When was the last time that happened? Probably not since Jeremy Shockey, maybe, if he ever even did it. I don't even know if he probably did. Yeah, it literally could be that long ago. And they didn't throw the ball much back then, so he might not have even done it. It is actually possible that no New York Giants tight end has ever cracked 1,000 receiving yards. Then again, it's a tough position to do that at. But Darren Waller, he's done it twice, and he could absolutely do it again, I think, especially in a Brian Dable-led offense. So let's talk about some other positions. Joseph Calandrucci is asking, what if a wide receiver doesn't drop to 25? What other positions do you think they draft in the first round? Now, the other one that we talked about a little bit earlier was center, and another one that I brought up was cornerback. I love this cornerback class. I just think there's so much talent, especially in round one. If the Giants don't go wide receiver in round one, I want a corner. But what are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to agree with you. I think that, again, this cornerback class is flooded with talent. I mean, it is flooded from the top and bottom. The Giants can't go wrong if they were to go get a corner. I think Deontay Banks, cornerback out of Maryland, fits this scheme perfectly. I know a lot of people are kind of getting down on Keely Ringo. I remember he was like a projected as a first-round pick, but now I'm seeing him as like an early second. But cornerback for me. I know interior offensive line is always the way you can go. Or Cyrus Torrence, if he's there, I wouldn't mind him. But if we're not going wide receiver, or if our wide receiver doesn't drop at 25, I think cornerback position the Giants want to go with.
And everyone, I just dropped Jayy's Twitter account in the bio. Please, everyone, go give him a follow. Also just noticed that our names aren't up here, and I don't know why, and I need to fix that. Unless they are on YouTube, but it's not showing right here. All right. Let's see what Fireplace has to say. We should remember whoever the Giants take in round one has a 50-year option, which is big for flexibility. Yes, 1,000% it is. That is a huge point that I love to bring up, especially when you take a look at a certain trade that the Giants made a couple of years ago that didn't pan out at all, but they had the right idea, and it was DeAndre Baker. They drafted him with the 31st overall pick. They could have gotten him in the second round, but they wanted the 50-year option. It was the right idea. That was the right move. I will stand by that. I think that trading away those 2 draft picks that they traded away absolutely was the right pick if he panned out. However, he didn't. It sucks to say, but DeAndre Baker just was not a culture fit. And I don't even know where he is right now. Where does he play? I'm not sure. I know he was with Kansas City for a little while.
Yeah. I don't think he's on the team.
I don't think he is. I don't know. He could be, though. He might have won a ring. Did he win a ring? Oh, crap. Could you imagine that?
That's like Darius Toney. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I actually like DeAndre Baker. Like, when we had took him and we traded up for him, I was more of a Byron Murphy guy who ended up going to the Cardinals, who's now a Viking. But I actually didn't mind DeAndre Baker. But, of course, he didn't fit the scheme. He had a horrible rookie year. I will never forget that. I just remember him being burnt toast, playing outside of, Janoris Jenkins, who was also burnt toast in that season. But he didn't pan out. But the trade, he was able to get his 5th-year option. He was like a late first-round pick. But he definitely did not pan out for the Giants at all.
Yeah, 100%. I also got to address something in the chat right here. Mark Bavaro, dude, check your team history. One of the all-time greats. I know who Mark Bavaro is, man. I know he's one of the all-time greats. That's why we brought him up. But yeah. I was saying back in the day, and someone else said, don't diss. Yeah, how could these boys diss Bavaro? We weren't dissing him. We're saying he's one of the legends. Yeah. And that's the only reason we brought him up. But I will say this. He is the tight end who's gone for 1,000 receiving yards, but we're not dissing him because he literally did it one time in his entire career, and it was 1,001 yard. That's what he totaled in his sophomore season in the NFL when he was a first-team All-Pro and also was 6th place in MVP voting. Pretty cool stuff. Fun facts about Mark Bavaro. But yeah, we were not dissing Mark Bavaro, man. We were not. That's a legend. I actually have a Mark Bavaro jersey in my closet. So,
I remember being little and watching those America's Games episodes back in the day with the Giant Super Bowls, and Mark Bravo was one of those. He was one of those guys up there. So we can never diss Mark Bravo. He's a Giant great.
Can't. I don't think the Giants would have been as good as they were back in the 80s without him. Super Bowl champion, you know. Yes,
Yeah.
he was the definition of clutch. Tough SOB. That he was. I've seen a bunch of videos that the America's Game ones. I actually love those. I think those are so great. Let me see that jersey. I'm not getting up and getting the jersey right now, but on the next live stream, I will have it for you, Danny boy. All right, let's see. There was something else in here that I saw. Okay. Christy, Schmitz at 25 or we're screwed. I don't agree. I don't think that we're screwed if we don't take JMS, but I do think JMS would be a good pick at 25. I think that he is a very refined player. He's not the best athlete, but you look at his production in college, he's a damn good player. And I think that he's just got such a high floor. Like you look at a lot of offensive line draft prospects who come out, and it's hard to project because maybe the offense that they played in, whatever, they had deficiencies in pass protection. I think that John Michael Schmitz just isn't a good athlete, really. He's a very average athlete, but he's just so technically refined. Like he is a good center, no doubt. So his ceiling is really low because I don't think he's got the potential to break out and be one of the best centers in the NFL. But I don't think he'll ever be a bad center. I think he'll always be plainly average to above. And I think that's actually something that you want out of a center, just having that reliability to always have like at least an average player in the center of the offensive line. And the Giants have never had that as long as I've been alive. So, well, that's actually not true. We had some good players back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, but point stands. You know, Sean O'Hara, shout out to him. He's a legend. I don't want to get roasted again in the chat, but I will say John Michael Schmitz, I do like him a lot. I don't think that we have to take him at number 25 overall, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on JMS?
I like him. He's definitely, the best center in this class. I think he, like you said, he does have a high floor. Might not ever be the best center in the game, but you can't go wrong with a solid center. And then we're talking about the Giants offensive line here. We will take a solid center. We will take a solid offensive line piece anywhere. And I don't think we'd be screwed though if we didn't take him at 25. I think that when you have centers like a Joe Tippmann out of Wisconsin, Olu Oluwatimi, Michigan, there are other centers in this class that we could take in the later round, second, third round. I do think the Giants are going to address that interior offensive line in the first 3 rounds. I do think that is going to be a position they will address. But I do like John Michael Schmitz. Like you say, he's not the best, athlete, but he's definitely a safe pick at 25. He's definitely a safe pick, and he would be probably the best center the Giants have had in a very, very long time in his rookie season. So wouldn't mind him at all. Wouldn't mind him, at 25. But I don't think we're screwed if we don't take him.
Yeah, I don't think that we're screwed if we don't take him. And one of the reasons why is because I do think that, first of all, center is the easiest position on the offensive line to mask. And even Jason Kelsey said that in a podcast recently. He was talking with his brother Travis Kelsey and was like, yeah, you're right. Because I don't know, Travis Kelsey was making fun of him. He was like, yeah, it is the easiest to mask. Because think about it, guys. Like you have a guard and a guard protecting that center. And a lot of the times there's not even a pass rusher who's going after the center. They're attacking the guards and the tackles. So the center doesn't do nearly as much on the offensive line in terms of blocking that the rest of the guys do. It's just your anchor in the middle. But having someone who's really reliable, who can call pass protections, point things out to the quarterback, that stuff is super important. So you always want either a veteran guy or a really high IQ football player. And I do think that JMS is a very high IQ football player. And that's where his value might lie for the New York Giants. So that could be an interesting way to look at that in the center position. But again, they're not screwed if they don't take a center. There's still veterans out there on the open market. They can find someone. Ben Bredesen's on the roster. He can move over to center. And maybe they go with a guard in the first round. I don't think that's likely. What are your thoughts on the offensive line classes here? Because I just feel like it's a really weak year for offensive linemen.
I think like you said, it's weak. It's a relatively weak class this year. I think it's more heavy at the tackle position. I think there's a lot of tackles that could end up going in the first round, but interior wise, it's not as strong as we've seen in the past years. You got O'Cyrus Torrence, who I think is going to be a first round draft pick, but outside of that, I don't see any other interior offensive linemen going in the first round. But it's still some good prospects out there. I'm not gonna trash the whole class, but I don't think it's as strong as past years draft classes in the interior.
No, yeah, I totally agree. And I think that I want to talk about something that you mentioned with O'Cyrus Torrence. He might be the only interior offensive lineman that goes in the first round. I've seen so many Giants fans be like, oh, Draft Osiris Torrance in round 2 because you go on to like draft websites, PFF, the Draft Network, they say he's a round 2 projection. He's a round 2 grade. So everyone assumes he's going to be there in round 2. He's not going to be there in round 2, especially not late in round 2 where the Giants are picking. And the reason why is what we're talking about. It's a really weak class for offensive linemen. So those round 2 graded offensive linemen that are the best offensive linemen in the class, they're going to go in round 1 because that's the whole name of the draft, man. You got to be the first one to put that card in. You got to pick him before your rival picks him. So Osiris Torrance, I mean, he's got his flaws, but I really like him. I could actually get behind him at the 25th overall pick. I wouldn't be thrilled about it. There would probably be better value on the board, but it would definitely plug a position of need. However, the Giants really need a left guard. He's a right guard. I don't think they can get out of the Galinsky contract like that. So I think that they might have to actually just go with what they have because Osiris Torrance, he's a right guard. I don't want to see him flip over to the left side. I feel like that's just the perfect way for Giants fans to go crazy on a player and kill all of his confidence because he's playing a new position in his rookie year. So, but all right, that kind of reminds me though. I like to ask this question, with everyone who's been on so far on this live stream, weekly live streams. We talk about Evan Neal, and I always say, is he a tackle or is he a guard? Because that conversation, it's going to come eventually if he doesn't turn things around. And so the main question that I have is how short of a leash should Evan Neal be on, right? Like how much leeway should this coaching staff be giving him? Is it 5 weeks into the regular season, he's still abysmal, then you start talking about the switch to guard? Or is it a whole nother season you wait for year 3 breakout, hopefully? Like what is your, level of leeway that you're giving to Evan Neal this season?
I think I don't think he has to his 3rd season to show progression. He was just that bad last year. If, we're 5 weeks into the season and Evan Neal looks like rookie Evan Neal, it's definitely going to, have some fans are going to definitely have backlash. They already had backlash with him last year when he was a rookie. Imagine how he's going to look, in his 2nd season. Definitely when the guy who's playing at the left tackle position had a bona fide, sophomore season. So people are gonna look at that and be like, oh, we're gonna start to worry. And I think he is a tackle, but we're gonna give him, more time to, progress. I want to give him more time to progress. He did deal with that injury, I think, around week 6, week 5. But I do think that's one thing that's great about it. If he doesn't, pan out at right tackle, you can move him inside, which would be kind of crazy, even though he is like mad tall. I think he's like 6'7", 6'8". But I think we're going to give him some time, but I don't think he has enough time to his 3rd season to show at least a little bit of progression from his poor rookie season.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think there's only so much you could say about rookie growing pains. I know he was dealing with an injury as well. It's a good point to bring up, but just looking at, in general, how poor his technique was in a lot of ways. And honestly, a lot of Giants fans were like, oh, well, he was a good run blocker. He really wasn't. He really wasn't that good.
Yeah.
Like he struggled in both facets of the game. Like we just assume he was a good run blocker because he's ginormous and he looks like he was built to run block in the NFL. But he had a lot of flaws. And I think that, there does need to be a lot of refinement. Hopefully he works hard in the offseason. I'm sure that he will. And I think that he can show some progress in the 2nd year of his career. And then, hopefully have that year 3 Andrew Thomas-esque breakout. If we have that, I mean, could you imagine having 2 Andrew Thomases on your offensive line? Like that would be absurd. But yeah, I agree with you though. I think that the questions of him being a tackle or a guard are definitely valid because when you look at his collegiate career, he really only spent like 1 full season at tackle, and it was on the left side. He was a really good guard, though, in I think it was his sophomore season. So, there is something to be said about, is Evan Neal more comfortable on the inside? Would he prefer to play on the inside? And then maybe you have to look into moving him on the inside. But right now, I think that they should keep rocking with him at the tackle position, of course. But yeah, if he struggles really badly in the first half of the season, I would start to make that consider that move. Stephen RC, do we like The Mandalorian? Well, Jay, do you watch The Mandalorian?
No, I know what it is, but I don't really watch Star Wars, Star Trek. I'm not really into that, but I heard of it. I think Sasha Banks was up there one time. I'm a big Sasha Banks fan, but I'm not really that much into The Mandalorian.
She was in it briefly, but she has not come back. She was in 2 episodes, but she was like a side character. But this season, she hasn't been in it at all. But no, I love it, Steven. I think it's been really good so far this season. I think last night's episode or today's episode, I stayed up because I'm a crazy, crazy young man. But I think it was awesome. And the flashback scene was sick. And I'm really excited to see where the season is heading because it seems like they're setting up something big. But let's get back to talking about some football. Danny Boy says, nobody here wants DeAndre Hopkins. Now, I'm going to say I think you're wrong about that. There's definitely plenty of people who want DeAndre Hopkins. I would be one of them if the Giants weren't so strapped for cash, if they didn't already trade for Darren Waller. I think that DeAndre Hopkins doesn't exactly make sense for the New York Giants at this point. However, I do imagine this offense with both Darren Waller and DeAndre Hopkins, and I do get really excited. That would be pretty cool. But right now, I don't think that the Giants are in a position to make that trade.
I agree. I was looking at his cap hit I think 15 minutes before the live stream started, and it was like 30 million, and then the next year's like 26 million. He's talented. He still has talent. Even though he's up there in age, he still has talent. I think he averaged 79.7 yards last year. That's like 1,300 yards on a 17-game span. But no, D-Hop makes no sense for the Giants right now. I said I don't see the Giants trading for a wide receiver, but I could definitely see us trading up for one. But I don't see DeAndre Hopkins as I've ruled him already out of my head. I don't think DeAndre Hopkins is going to be a Giant.
I agree with you. And someone said, there we go. Shenando. What's up, man? Oh, Shenado. I said it right the first time. I messed it up there. I'm sorry. He'll take D-Hop over Odell. I actually think that Odell makes more sense for the Giants right now because he's cheaper. I like what you're talking about with the cap hit, that contract. One thing to say about that, though, is DeAndre Hopkins did say that he's willing to rework that deal. So maybe they extend him, add extra 2 years on, then just lower the average annual salary altogether. That's possible, but I don't know. It's just a tough contract to inherit. I think that honestly, the way that DeAndre Hopkins trade market is looking right now, I don't know if anyone's going to trade for him. He might end up getting released or he might just be trapped in Arizona. One of those two things could end up happening. That would really suck for DeAndre Hopkins. But if he gets released, that would be great for him. He can go wherever he wants on a new deal that makes sense for both parties. And then if that does happen, then I think the Giants have to have some interest. However, I think that, again, they've positioned themselves to be ready for the NFL draft. They're ready to just start building through the draft. I think they're pretty much done with all of the wide receivers, trades, and free agent signings. Do I think a second round pick is too much for D-Hop? Well, yes, absolutely. Yeah, that is far too much. Stephen RC's right. Fourth or a fifth for D-Hop, it probably won't happen, so it's a no for me. I think that I was reading today, Albert Breer, was it, that was saying that's kind of where his trade value is heading. It's closer to the Brandon Cooks, and a lot of that has to do with this contract. So I don't know. I mean, does that change things for you though, Jay? If it ends up being like a 5th round pick, is that where you're like, okay, let's figure out how to make this contract work?
I think you got to ask yourself, why is DeAndre Hopkins trade value at a 5th round pick? And then you look at the contract, you're like, okay, that's why it's at a 5th round draft pick, 4th round draft pick. I also look at it like this. Yeah, he is, a number 1 wide receiver, but he's not a guy that's going to be here for the next 5 years. Like one of the wide receivers that if we were to take in the draft would be. He's not going to be, again, people say a stopgap center. We have so many stopgap centers. DeAndre Hopkins would kind of be a stopgap wide receiver 1. I don't think the Giants, even though a 5th round draft pick sounds appealing because he is talented, just the contract, the age, he's starting to, miss a couple of games here and there. I don't even think the 5th round draft pick, value would, add up to a trade for the Giants.
I think that's actually pretty interesting. Yeah. I don't know, because a 5th round pick sounds like such a steal for a player like that. But I mean, you're right. I think the main argument against that, saying that the 5th round pick for Hopkins doesn't match the value for the Giants. Well, I think a lot of 5th round picks are only on the team for 1 to 2 years anyway. And so maybe you can make that argument. And a lot of 5th round picks maybe don't even make the team, especially with the way historically the Giants' luck has been drafting in the middle rounds. Someone gets injured, someone gets, it just doesn't pan out, whatever. And I think the other thing to say is like, well, what if you take a receiver in the 5th round and he'll be on a 4-year deal instantly? But then you're asking him to pan out and be the player that D-Hop is. So I don't know. I think it's a nuanced conversation, but right now it's just, when it comes down to it, the Giants literally just cannot afford it. They would have to do so much to their staff. Like they would have to restructure Daniel Jones's contract probably. And that's the last thing I want to do because I still really like the flexibility of that deal to get out of it in a couple seasons. I don't want to mess with that thing at all, but it is a possibility for the Giants that if they run out of cap space this offseason, they just keep going crazy and making moves, they might have to restructure that deal. And I personally think that could be a nightmare situation for the Giants. Like, they could totally screw their future if they do that. So they need to be really careful, and trading for a guy like DeAndre Hopkins could actually mess up everything for the whole future of the Giants. So it's a domino effect. But then again, you trade for DeAndre Hopkins. Daniel Jones is amazing. You restructure his deal, and he's amazing for the whole duration of the deal. He wins a Super Bowl with DeAndre Hopkins. Well, then we're all happy, and but that's the name of the game. However, I just think that the risk is much higher than the potential reward. So that's really kind of where I stand. But what did you think of the DJ deal? I don't know. What were your thoughts on that one?
I think like everyone, when we first saw the numbers, we were like, okay, let's see how the contract is structured. And when we saw how that was planned out, I think it's a great deal. I think that when the actual numbers, like, was it 4 to 160 or was it like 4 to? I can't remember the actual numbers, but when we look at it, it's like a 3-year deal kind of. And you got the cap in next year, which is going to be huge. The number does inflate, but we're looking at that 3rd year and that 4th year. By that time, if Daniel Jones hasn't shown he's worth that money, the Giants can, cut ties with him. And I think that is a great deal for Daniel Jones. But I also think it's a great deal for the New York Giants. You're not, you give yourself insurance while DJ does still end up getting paid. So I like the deal. Daniel Jones is back. You know what I'm saying? It's time to build around him, what the Giants are kind of doing. You got the Darren Waller trade. You got, so yeah, I like the contract for the Giants, but I also like the contract for Daniel Jones too.
Yeah, I think that they can feasibly get out of it after 2 years even. So it could be this season and the following one, and then you're out of it, which is like incredible. So it was like a 2-year deal with a penalty, a 3-year deal with like 0 penalty at all, or a 4-year deal if he plays great. So I don't know. How much better could you actually structure that thing? I think Joe Shane did a masterclass there. But another player whose contract is kind of in question, the Giants are reportedly not going to touch it this year. They're going to ride it out. It's Adoree Jackson. What are your thoughts on that decision? I don't know if you saw that report. The Giants are planning on riding out the Adoree contract for another year, and then, we'll talk about it next offseason. But right now, I like Adoree Jackson. I think that they should just try and extend him. So you'll clear up cap space this year if you do that. But I get why the Giants don't want to have a lot of, contracts on their books. But I mean, where do you stand on the Adoree Jackson contract? Should they extend him or just ride it out like they're planning to?
I think they need to extend him. We just was in the freaking, wild card round. He literally shut down Justin Jefferson, who's arguably the best wide receiver in the league. I think that, speaks for itself. And if there was any move that the Giants or Joe Shane rather, I could critique, it is not extending Adoree Jackson, who's on an $17 million cap hit. I think that would be a smart move. He showed you, last year he was a suitable CB1. And that was a question going into that season after cutting James Bradbury was, can Adoree Jackson stay healthy and be the number one, corner? Now, he didn't stay healthy because we put him at special teams. I don't know why we did that, but I think the Giants definitely should extend Adoree Jackson. I think he just showed you that he can be a cornerback. He just shut down Justin Jefferson. But yeah, I think we need to. I hope we do extend Adoree Jackson. He's basically entering his prime, and I would not mind, adding some years to his contract. I want to extend Adoree Jackson for sure.
Yeah, no, I 1000% agree. I think that he's far exceeded all expectations of that contract. You think about when he was signed to be a CB2, and he was a bona fide CB1 this year for the Giants. And I think there's a lot to be said about that. He's also got leadership skills, and he was arguably the most valuable player for the New York Giants in the wild card round, like you just said, because look at that first game against Minnesota. If he was out there, they probably win that, but instead they lose on an insane field goal. That always happens to the Giants. But then you take a look at the wild card game. That was the difference. Just having Adoree Jackson on the field made the entire difference. So I think he's really important to this team, and I think 1000% he should be extended. We got a donation here. Mike Chills. I watch both your guys' videos literally every day at work. There isn't a core YouTube NFL fandom community like the Giants. It's just facts. Thank you all, dude. Thank you. Appreciate the donation. Appreciate your kind words. And I'm so happy that we can provide you with some brightness in the middle of your workday. All right, let's go ahead. See what other good questions you guys have. There's some questions in the chat, guys. Come on. Give me something good. It's a really active chat today, though. I'm not even going to lie. I'm very happy to see the turnout. A lot of the times we'll have a lot of people in here, but the chat isn't this active. But you guys have been really active today, and I very much appreciate it. Keep it up. This is what I love to see. Paul, you missed it. Addison or JSN, we were kind of talking about it earlier. We we're both on Addison, but I'm starting to lean JSN. I don't know. It's a nuanced conversation. But you know what though? One thing that I'll say is I've seen JSN's mock draft like value be as early as the 9th overall pick and as late as like the 27th overall pick. It's like, where does he fall? It's really interesting, but a good pro day, a lot of good interviews. He could really realistically like move up into the top 10, just not even be a question for the New York Giants. But I think this is a really good question right here from John Ski, who has a hideous logo as his profile picture. I'm going to have to take his comment off, but I will answer the question because I like it. Do we think that Addison can play on the outside? Yes, I do. Devontae Smith plays on the outside, so why can't Addison? You should know that yourself, John Ski.
It's a perfect comparison. Perfect comparison.
Yep. Yeah, he plays that Z. AJ Brown runs that X. They got whoever they got over in the slot. I don't even remember. Don't want to remember. Don't want to think about them. Doesn't matter. When you got an AJ Brown as your X and you've got Devontae Smith as your Z, I mean, that's exactly what you need in an offense. Yep. Yeah. And so maybe the Giants are building something similar. Who knows? Probably Isaiah Hodgins is going to be their X this year. I think it's going to be rotation with him. Darius Slayton, honestly, arguably works better as a Z. I don't know. It's going to be really they're missing something in that receiving core. Like, that's true. Yeah. They are missing something. And you could argue that they're missing a dominant slot. Yeah. What is it? Go ahead.
Okay. So I was like, I was making a video a couple of days ago, and like off the top of my brain, I was thinking how like our offense kind of, it looks, or like you say, replicates the Baltimore Ravens. They have a dominant tight end in Mark Andrews. We have, who we hope to be looks back at 2021, 2019, Darren Waller is our dominant tight end, but they don't really have that outside threat. They have a whole bunch of a lot of fast guys, a lot of guys that can be high-end wide receiver twos, but they are missing that real bona fide wide receiver one outside threat. And I think the Giants wide receiver room and tight end room kind of replicates to that, Baltimore Ravens offense. They like to run the ball. We have Saquon Barkley, who runs the ball effectively. I think it kind of like compares to each other, kind of.
I like that and I hate that, like I really like that comparison. I really don't like that comparison because if that is what the Giants are missing, that could be the bane of their existence, just the same way that it was for the Ravens. The Ravens never made it to a Super Bowl because they didn't have that outside receiving threat. So I do think that it is a point of emphasis whether the Giants look at, the Devontae Smith clone and Jordan Addison as their outside threat. If they feel like they need a true X, because you can get by having an okay X, like an Isaiah Hodgins, he's a big body guy. He plays that X role. He plays that well. And you can have a really dominant Z. And maybe that's where you look at Addison, and that offense can be solid. But I don't know if the Giants feel like they need to find their X, who is it? Because there really aren't a whole lot of X receivers in this class. Like Quentin Johnston's your main one that stands out. But a lot of these guys in this class are slot guys. They're Z guys. They're shorter. They're skinnier. They're quicker. So, and that sounds exactly like what the Giants are looking for. But you might be right. What they're missing is that X, what Kenny Golladay never could be. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting. I don't know how it shapes out. And maybe that's where the argument of DeAndre Hopkins comes into play. Who knows? What do we think of the Bobby McCain signing? I think it's okay. It's solid depth. And I actually think that's a good way to segue into the safety position as a whole. And we can start talking about that. But Bobby McCain, veteran defensive back, versatile. That's your depth. That's like when Julian Love was a rookie and he was your backup depth piece that just lined up anywhere. You always need a guy like that, just a versatile defensive back who can line up all over the place. That's going to be Bobby McCain for the Giants defense, in my opinion. He's played pretty much every position. He's going to continue to do that. Probably not at a high level. This is not a starter in my eyes. He was signed to the veteran minimum for a reason. He's going to be a decent backup for the Giants, but I do like the signing because I think that this was a depth piece that the Giants were in desperate need of.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad that the Giants didn't, lose Julian Love and just kept that, spot just like untouched. I don't think this is a signing that Giants fans need to be critiquing much. It's for the vet minimum. It's a depth signing. He does add versatility as a safety slot corner, and he's not come out the best season, but again, he's a depth piece. And for what it's worth, in 2021, he actually didn't have a bad season. I think he had like a 70-something PFF grade. It wasn't bad, but it's a depth signing. Nothing crazy. You know what I'm saying? Not gonna hurt the Giants in any way. It's a decent sign.
Oh, I wasn't muted there. Yep. No, I think we're on the same page with that one. But Mike Chill's another donation. Thank you, my man. 2 wide receiver 2s like Jalen Reed or Mike Wilson, or 1 wide receiver 1 like JSN or Addison. Which would you prefer in the draft? Also, Michael Schmitz or Tippmann? Michael Schmitz for me. Tippmann's decent though. And my answer is going to be one WR1, kind of for the same reasons we were just going over. I think that the Giants are missing, that X, or at least that really good outside presence. And I think that that's what they need, because they have a lot of like WR2s right now. I feel like Darius Slayton's a pretty good second receiver on a team. Isaiah Hodgins can also be a good second receiver. Let's see how he blossoms in his second year with the Giants, but he can be a WR2. Paris Campbell, also not a number one option, but could be a solid number two. They've just got a lot of WR2s. To be fair, you can get by with that. Let's think back to the New England Patriots, who pretty much always had some really good WR2s. Julian Edelman, though, is a player. This is actually, now I'm getting myself really interested in this Patriots comparison. This is a good comparison. The Giants are loaded up on WR2s. Their WR1 was Julian Edelman. He wasn't an outside guy. He was a guy who was dominant from the slot, but was really strong. And the number one draft comp that I keep seeing for JSN is Julian Edelman. That's it. That's why they're so interested. Maybe that's exactly why. And of course, we know that they always had a dominant tight end in Gronk. They had a great 2 tight end set in Aaron Hernandez before his faithful demise. But when you take a look at what the Giants are building on offense, it kind of makes sense. It kind of looks like the New England Patriots back in the day. And let's throw in the fact that Brian Daboll was a tight ends coach of the New England Patriots at one point in his career. So boom, that's it. I am a genius. Look at the way I'm cooking right now. But I'll let you give your take on this question. I want the WR1 like a JSN. I think he makes a lot of sense for this team. However, Mike Wilson is a guy that you mentioned there, Mike, and I do really like Michael Wilson out of Stanford. He's a really good player, but I think it's just you got to find your number one guy.
Yeah, like you said, I like Jayden Reed, like Michael Wilson, but the Giants need that number one guy. I know that, I actually like, if the Giants were to have a wide receiver one that could take on that wide receiver one role, it makes Darius Slayton and Isaiah Hodgins' game much easier. They don't have to worry about being, lined up, in front of the best cornerback on the team. So, yes, the wide receiver one is the way that we are going to go. I think that would definitely make, Daniel Jones' life easier, and the wide receivers that play next to him easier. For sure.
Yeah, I think that would be big time. I think it opens up a lot for a lot of people. Like when we're talking about Darren Waller, moving him all around the offense, making him, this versatile chess piece. Well, not if he keeps getting double teamed, not if he's the only true receiving threat in the secondary. I mean, that's a good way for Giants fans to get disappointed by that trade. But if you find the guy on the outside who needs to be double teamed, well, then that opens up everything over the middle for Darren Waller. So yeah, I just think that that WR1 and then the Giants offense is set minus the offensive line. They do still need to address that.
Yes.
That is still going to be a problem for them. But honestly, I don't know. What do you think about this? No matter what the Giants do, their offensive line is screwed this season, just because there's no way for them to fix this overnight. Like we're banking on Evan Neal taking a big jump. You can't bank on that. Mark Lewinsky was really bad last year. He's only getting older. He's not likely to get very much better. They don't have really any true starters at center or guard. And if they do, they're veteran bridge gap players, or they're rookies who are going to have rookie growing pains. No matter what, the Giants offensive line is going to suck in 2023. Maybe that's a bold take for me, a hot take, whatever, but that's my take. What are your thoughts on it?
I don't want to agree with you, but I kind of have to. We're looking at Evan Neal, who we are hoping and praying has a better sophomore season. Mark Lewinsky, I don't even want to talk about him. We know what he is. Not good, just not good. And we don't have a center on the roster right now. I know we worked out John H. from the Steelers. Not going to be a guy that you even want starting. And, the left guard position, we have some guys. You got Shane Lemieux, not good. You got Ben Bredesen, who's, he's okay. Still not a guy you want starting. We used a third-round draft pick last year on Josh Zudu, so maybe, he, fights for that starting spot and, does well. Marcus McKeithen's coming off an ACL injury. And all we got is Andrew Thomas, who, is the best offensive lineman or best offensive tackle, in my opinion, in the league. But I don't think we're screwed. I think the Giants still have a chance to add on some pieces. I want to see what we can do in the draft. There's always a slight chance, like you said yesterday, a couple of days ago, that Ben Jones, do the Giants take a flyer on him? But he had the concussion with the old physical thing. But we're banking on a lot of people. We're banking on Evan Neal having a bounce back season off that bad rookie year. We're banking on whoever the left guard is to do something. Whoever the center is, I don't even know who the center is. So as of right now, we are kind of screwed because we don't even have a starting center, and the offensive line doesn't move if you don't have a center that knows what to do. So hopefully the Giants can make something shake in the draft. Hopefully, but even then, the guy we take is gonna be a rookie. So you never know. He's gonna go through rookie growing pains unless he has a freaking dominant rookie season. So as of right now, you're kind of right. The Giants' offensive line is kind of screwed as of right now. So we're screwed, kind of.
It is, man. It's kind of screwed, but you just kind of made the case there for all of our JMS truthers, everyone who wants John Michael Schmitz in the first round. You kind of just made the case for him. You just told them that's exactly what the Giants should do. However, I'm still just gonna ride this hype train. I really talked myself into Jaxon Smith-Njigba tonight. Like that whole comparison that I made to the Patriots, and now it's just like it clicked for me. And I'm like, that is why the Giants are so interested in him. They need that player now. So all right, we're gonna wrap up here in like a minute or so. It's almost been an hour, but the last question that I'm gonna ask you, and I think that we can dive into this for a couple minutes, no rush, but would you how much are you willing to give up? Like, are you willing to trade up for any of these receivers? Who are you willing to trade up for? And what are you willing to give up in the first round of the draft?
Yes, I was talking about it today. I'm willing to give up some capital to trade up for one of these wide receivers. I think if the Giants and Brian Dable look at one of these wide receivers and say, we got to trade up for that guy, we got to get that guy in this offense, I'm going to trust them to do that. And it really does depend on where the Giants are trading up from. It depends on what are the other teams that, are wide receiver needy. What are they going to give up if they want to make a trade up? I think the one spot, though, is pick 17 with the Steelers. They most likely, or basically what I've seen, is that they are going to go corner, possibly offensive tackle. It's deep classes for both of those positions. So trading up from pick 25 to pick 17, I don't think they will cost another first-round draft pick. It might cost a third for next season or a third from this season. I'll be willing to give that up. I actually will be able to get willing to give that up for one of these wide receivers. It fits a need for the Giants, and you're basically able to get your guy. You're going to be able to get your guy because you're not trading up for a guy that's not really like we don't know about it. You're trading up for your guy if you're trading up. So yeah, I'll be down to trade up for one of these guys, and if it had to be anybody, I'm a Jordan Addison guy. I would indeed trade up for Jordan Addison. Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I think if we want Jaxon Smith-Njigba, we might gotta trade up for him, and I think the Giants love him. So the Giants, I think they'll be able to. They would not mind trading up for one of those guys.
I think that they have to trade up for both JSN and Jordan Addison. I think that Jordan Addison's combine, there's a really good chance that he's on the board for the Giants now. But JSN, I do think you have to trade up for him, and the Giants seem super interested in him. If they want him, they're going to have to move up to get him, and I'm all for it, dude. I think that, actually, when you take a look at it, there is a reference point. I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't remember the exact terms of the trade off the top of my head. But last year, the Detroit Lions traded up for the Alabama kid. What's his name? Williams, right? Jameson? Jameson Williams. Does that sound right? Yep. There we go. Yep. I figured it out.
Yep.
Yeah, they traded up for him. I think they had the 32nd overall pick and the 34th overall pick. So top of the second round, bottom of the first round. They traded up to the 12th overall pick, and they also got back the 46th overall pick. So essentially what that means is that the Giants would have to trade up and move down in the second round at the same time if you're going based on previous trade value, which I'm totally fine with. However, the Giants aren't picking that high in the second round, so they might also have to throw in like a 5th or a 6th round pick, whatever. But that's fine with me. And I think that's totally worth it when you're looking at a guy who you think can be that WR1 and just open up your entire offense like we've talked about for a good portion of this live stream. So yeah, I'm all in on it. The Giants see their guy in the first round. You go up there, you get him, and man, I can't wait for this draft. And I also can't wait to continue covering it right here on Fireside Giants. See that? I always know how to transition to a good outro. But again, guys, please make sure to go subscribe to Jay Dimes. The link is down below in the subscription box or in the description box. Go sub, and of course, also go check him out on Twitter. And make sure to smash the like if you did enjoy this live stream. But before we wrap, Jay, any last words?
None really, man. Just thanks for having me, man. Like I said, man, I watch all y'all videos. I really do. Like I said, I respect the grind. Y'all pumping out Giants content almost every single day. So again, if you have not subscribed to this channel yet, do it. Do it now. You got some good content going on over here, man. So again, thanks for having me. Everyone in the chat, he said y'all was active, so thank y'all for being active. The questions were great. But man, thank you. I'm excited for the draft. I'm excited for what the Giants are gonna do and Joe Shane and them. And that's really it, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. Happy to have you and looking forward to collaborating again in the future. But again, guys, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel. We'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one. And let's go Giants.